Hey model builders, today I have for you this Runes terrain piece. This is built out of PIR foam. It's this stuff here. It has a dense cell structure, can be quite flaky. You're going to need to protect that respiratory system. So get your mask, stay safe, and let's jump right on into it. So most of what we're going to do here is going to look the best if we don't try and be too squared, too exact, too precise, whatever. You can just cut through all that too. For thickness, we'll be going around 3/4 or so. Yeah, that'll be fine. Don't be afraid to be thinner, it's fine. So for the pattern on these rocks, we're going to go with about a thumb or so. So we could just freehand everything that we're doing. But I find that every once in a while you'll get a little bit of a horrible time trying to fix some of the crossover from the top to the other side. And there we've completed the basic layout for where our rocks are going to be. The rest of the pattern, it can deviate somewhat from this, but this top part right here is where we really want these to carry over. And I think that's roughly what I said we're going to be at, somewhere around a thumb's width. They are going to be stone wall creations, so by no means will all of these be uniform in size. Once we're done, we hope, because this is not a cinder block wall. And that's where we can get the problem with these lines here on the two sides lining up as we're working one side to the other. And that's about all the layout we need, but to illustrate, I'm sure you guessed it, these are going to be off-centered. And what we're going to do is just start to make these into rocks here. And it's going to take us a little while to get this material out of there. So now I'm going to start to pull the material out of there with a brush. This brush is actually going to be removing a lot of little pieces, whether they've been cut or scraped already or not. So you'll be careful. You're going to remove a whole lot of material with the brush, and you could overdo it. First, we want to definitely make sure we get all those big pieces that we've left behind out of there. They're not part of the piece anymore. And perhaps after we're done with this here, a good time to take a vacuum, get some of this material out of the way, off of our clothes, off of the floor, off of our work surface, and off of our terrain piece that we're building. And we'll remove all that material here with the brush. And like I said, be cognizant that this is a very fine material, powdery. And as we're pulling these synthetic bristles across, we are moving more material, not only the material that we've cut out, and weathering away these stones. If we're not careful, we can end up with nothing but a pile of dust for our vacuum to eat. You want to kind of be careful of hitting this so much with the brush that you end up with just sort of a Lincoln log look to it. If you do, maybe start, roughing that up and cutting some of those corners off. Also, little strikes like this, if you can find them, go ahead and take them out. They'll probably bug you later. Gonna snap that out of there, and then later, right before we prime this thing, we'll attach this rock something like that or whatever. Helter skelter. So I'm keeping most of these separated for each section. Well, I'm just going to start laying in some glue down here. Something like that. And I see this one going in here. Now, somewhere in this structure, I want enough room for either vehicles or large figures to be able to move all the way through or all over the place, whichever. Right. Plenty. Something like right back there. And we're going to drop on in some of these pieces that we have saved. And possibly even kept track of. this is the one that we need to figure out how we wanted to just sort of delicately let that thing teeter on the edge of the wall here. That's probably way too much. So right now we have about 3 different sized grains, 4 different sized grains here, I guess. This is a little bit of actual rock. That what you're looking at is kitty litter, and then the tan stuff is actual rock, not used kitty litter. That's chunks of glue. So there we go. Good enough, good enough. Just throw it on there. And then we have sand here. We have sand and some larger pieces of decorative black sand. The sand I'm using is a white sand. And I think in there I have a couple little granules of a material I'll be pulling out for us later. And it is a decorative, like, fireplace faux gold material that sort of shines, but we'll be covered under paint, and it makes for a nice small rock look to it. Always generally best to avoid real rock and use materials like nuts, other things that will look just like rock when painted. And we want to avoid what I did over here, of course. To an extent, anyway. So there we go. We'll just cover the rest of this glue in sand. Right now I could let this sit and dry up and then shake it off and call it good and primer it and everything. So we take the bulk off and save it for the next one. Good. Alright, I have some material here that is out of decorative fireplaces. And it's kind of a shiny thing, supposed to catch a lot of the flames. Anyway, it makes for a nice rocky texture. We're going to use some of that in here. And I have some little rocks that I've gathered. And we're going to use just a very small amount of those. And I think I'm just gonna find a couple little spots in here. Okay, I'm just going to bring a towel into the corner here, and this is diluted glue. I want to keep everything that I've left on. This is so saturated with water at this point. Most of this is just going to go ahead, blend down and thicken up all the surrounding area, more or less. And you may take care to just get the sides of the item that you're trying to embed. Really, it's all about the texture more than the item itself. So I've put it up on a stand to keep everything from drying to the bottom of the platform and letting it sit off scale. What we should do right now is walk away, completely let it dry, and come back in with our primers and coatings and get this whole thing just covered. What I believe I'll do right now is grab my airbrush and do a quick little primer coat up here on the wall surfaces, just to let that dry during the same period of time and get us closer to where we want to be at the beginning of our next step.